Uh, okay, so I'm not going to be a popular guy tonight. I know, I know. Tonight's game was interesting, and I say that as a Bruins fan who felt I thought Carolina was the better team for most of this game, but sometimes it's not the better team that wins the game, and that's how that works. And it's an early goal by Kampfer, assist to Johansson. Looks good, but then there's a penalty within 45 seconds. Aho then scores from Svechnikov and Stahl. That ties it up 47 seconds later and only 3 seconds into the power play. So Carolina's power play can't score, yada, yada, yada. That storyline continues until about 3 minutes into this game. And you get the feeling like it's going to be a really high scoring game, which it really wasn't. And I thought both teams had a strong start. I thought the Canes were doing really well, and through the first half of the first period, the shots were 6 apiece. Very evenly matched teams. And I'm going to say this. Physically, Carolina's the better team. For speed, I think Carolina's the better team. For top end talent, small edge to the Boston Bruins. And tonight it felt like, we'll get to it. Canes, as I just stated, they're fast to the puck and they look confident. So Carolina didn't just come out like underdog wild cards, and I think that might be why they're the one wild card that's still left standing of the four. Chara then got hurt on a PK shot block. It went right off the top of his foot, right off the outside of it. That has to hurt a lot. Even if he is bigger than a human, you chop him down. That's the whole thing. As a short guy myself, I understood that in high school, that the really tall guys, you got to knock them down if you want them on your level. So it kind of felt like Chara was on the rest of everybody's level for a while. I think Chara skating on his knees would be about as tall as a lot of players. At any rate, the Canes' power play I thought was much better than the last round. So they had another power play before the end of that first period, and I thought it looked fantastic. But it didn't go anywhere. And it's mentioned by the announcers as well. Weak calls on both sides. The penalties that are being called in this game were weird, and we will continue to talk about that through the rest of this game. And I would hope that the NHL and the officiating people that are watching this, and they're officiating supervisors that watch every game, especially at this point in the year, I would really hope they paid attention to how this game was called, because it was weird. So it's 1-1 after one. Second period, again, I put down they're evenly matched. Carolina did have a 10-8 edge in shots after the first period, but that's kind of standard for Carolina, right? The Canes got a third power play, and I thought Boston was flirting with some danger here. And then I put down Chara and Hamilton unfriendly. Dougie Hamilton, booed by the Boston faithful, and a lot of just not very nice things being said between him and his former teammates. And I always had the feeling that when Dougie left town that there was some not some very good feelings between himself and the Bruins. And whether that's some of what we saw in this first game, or if it's just the competitiveness of Hamilton and his frustration definitely as the game went along, and not completely unwarranted, I might add. Rask was the one keeping this game tied. Through the first 8 minutes of the second period, Carolina had outshot Boston 8-2. So this was starting to feel a lot like watching Dallas. Boston was having trouble clearing the zone. They were not the first one to the puck, and they just didn't look as fresh as the team they were playing against. It really felt familiar. And then Greg McKegg scores a goal from Martinook and Ferland right before he run Tuukka Rask over. Now, if he had hit Rask like that before the puck goes in, there's no way that counts as a goal, but because the puck had already gone in, it's a goal. And that's fine. Didn't bother me. I already had it on the board before they were done reviewing it. And, Rask is okay, which is the good news. So Rask seemed a little shaken up, but didn't stay down and stayed in the game. And then it was almost 3-1 right after that. It was a very close call. Carolina almost got that third goal. Very, very close. Boston very fortunate at that point that it wasn't 3-1 or 4-1 with the way Tuukka Rask was playing. The Canes were in total control. The shots were 13-5 for Carolina, 12 and a half minutes into that period. And they would end up being 15-10 for the period. So after I wrote that, Boston got some more play going at the other end, but it still felt like Carolina was in full control. Fogle booed every time he touches the puck because there's a perceived slew foot on Torrey Krug. I don't know. And you know what's funny is right away, of course, Caps fans on Twitter and some sports fans right away talking about Warren Fogle and how dirty and horrible he is. And all I kept thinking was, but he was fine in the last round. I don't remember Islander fans saying anything about him. He does play a physical game. He does get involved a lot. I don't view what he did as necessarily suspension worthy. I'm not just saying that to be nice. I think that a lot of Bruins fans are going to get mad at him. That's fine. I wasn't overly impressed with some Bruins fans, but we'll get to that. The Bruins power play couldn't score. I put up before the end of the second period, like, they just can't score. They're getting chances. They can't score. Mrazek's playing great. And through 2 periods, it looked like the choice to play Peter Mrazek was just fine. And yet, I still kept asking myself, but wouldn't you want to play McElhinney after the way he played in those last 3 games against the Islanders? I mean, it's fine that Mrazek is back, but don't you want to have McElhinney in? And I'd be interested to know if there might be a chance we'll see McElhinney in Game 2. Because, again, it felt like it was different in front of McElhinney than it is in front of Mrazek. But we'll see, right? Third period, early on, Bruins get a power play. And I'm not putting notes up because I'm like, well, they're not going to score. And then Johansson from Marchand and Krejci. And the interesting thing with that was one crap power play. That was a power play that was going nowhere. That was just an awful power play by the Bruins. I was actually in the process of putting up basically crap power play by the Bruins and had to erase it because Johansson scored while I was writing it. So I was like, oh, okay, all right. So that went in. All right. And then there was almost immediately a Carolina power play after. And this is where Rod Brind'Amour starts getting upset. And one thing we noticed tonight, and I don't know if you were watching the American feed, I don't know if they talked about this, but there was a lot of play on this on the Sportsnet feed, that Bergeron and Chara were talking a lot to the referee, and every time they were talking to the referee, Justin Williams made sure he was out there listening to what was being said. And there's already a mind game going on between Carolina and Boston when it comes to talking to the referees. The idea being that you could talk to the referee about a play that just went on and went, that's not a penalty? Or that was a penalty? Seriously, you're going to call that? The idea being that you'll kind of get in the ref's head and that the next call will go your way. Both teams were playing that game tonight, so it's not a matter of one team or another. They were both doing it, and it was an interesting thing to watch because I haven't seen that in every series, but with veteran captains like this, they're aware that there's a lot of different levels you can look at in order to have your strategy for your game work out. But on that next power play, Bergeron scored from Marchand and DeBrusk, and that's 28 seconds after the goal by Johansson. So a power play that was largely ineffectual, not making a difference, and all of a sudden 2 power play goals in less than 30 seconds. So Rod Brind'Amour calls a timeout. And it's at this point that we notice a goony, stupid Boston Bruins fan behind the Carolina bench drinking 2 beers at once. Now, I get it. You're on camera. You're behind the bench. You've probably paid a mint for these tickets, or your dad did, or your girlfriend, or whoever. And so you want to get on camera and you want to be an idiot. They talked about it after the game, and apparently he started to kind of do that again during the next stoppage. And there was an usher who came down and told him to knock it off. So it's fans like that that are part of the reason why when I wear this jersey and I go out in public, people go, oh, there goes a prick. Oh, yeah. See that Bruins jersey? He's a prick. And I get it. And coming out of tonight, yeah. So I put up here, Hamilton undisciplined, another penalty. But then I wrote iffy call, because that was a really iffy call. And for Hamilton to go to the box on back-to-back power plays, and it's an iffy call the second time. The first time I can kind of understand it, but there was a lot of iffy penalties. There were a lot of calls in this game that I looked at and I went, that's a penalty? And it's on both teams. This is not Carolina or Boston. This is both. And then what's weird is that the refs are calling too much, and then at the same time, they're showing that it's a chippy game. There's guys punching each other, guys high-sticking each other, guys cross-checking each other, guys hooking each other. That's not being called. So the more egregious stuff that's going on, where at the very least they should have called offsetting minors. There was one play where I think it was Williams I want to say Williams and Chara, and they were both kind of going, or was it Bergeron, and they were both going back and forth. And I remember saying out loud to the TV, they should both go. They're nowhere near the puck, so they're both interfering with each other. There was shoves and pushes going back and forth, and I thought, you know what? And I'll say this. Now, people are going to say that's playoff hockey. No, they had already established the bar was low to call penalties with some of these crap penalties they were calling on both sides. So what they did was they called these crap penalties, and then these other ones that looked a little more like penalties, they went, they're just playing hockey, we're going to let them play. To do both things in the same game leaves both benches saying, we don't know what a penalty is in this game. And I felt bad for Carolina because they're down 3-2 in part because we don't know what a penalty is in this game. And then there were very few chances. Boston was doing a good job protecting the lead. I think the shots were 4-4 about halfway through the third period, I should say. And they were controlling it pretty well. And then, and I put up here after, because I thought it at the time, but before I could say anything, the empty netter scored. Down 1 goal, I thought Rod Brind'Amour pulled Mrazek too early. I do. I think he pulled him too early. I think around a minute and a half, you can pull him. More than 2 minutes, I think you increase the risk of giving up a shorthand or giving up an empty net goal. And I don't have all the numbers, and I know there's advanced stats people that go, no, you've got a better chance of scoring. But I really think that waiting until about a minute and a half is your best call. Coyle gets the empty netter from Carlo and Corrali, and that does it. That really does it. And then just for icing on the cake, Chris Wagner gets a goal 11 seconds after that. So it makes the score much uglier than it would have been if they hadn't pulled the goalie. And I really thought Carolina played a great game, and they just lost it. And like I put up here, I think Kane's goalie pulled too early. I really thought Brind'Amour pulled the goaltender too early. This was a very good game that sadly was marred by poor officiating. And again, you need to establish early on what is and isn't a penalty, and I didn't feel like they did that. So that'll be the storyline coming out of this game. Boston gets the win. They're up 1-0 on Carolina. But I think a lot of people are going to be talking about officiating and what was and wasn't a penalty in this game. And again, it was on both sides. There were times where I would see high stick and I go, well, that should have been a Carolina penalty. And then I'd see an interference or a cross-check and I go, that should be a Boston penalty. So it was really kind of both ways. And this was a weird series start to me because I don't... Like, do I want Boston to win? Absolutely. But again, I love the Carolina story. If it's one of those things that it's sort of like... I don't know how to describe it, but it's sort of like when you're playing video games with your friends and you go, well, if I lose to him... It's fine. It's fine. I'm not losing to those guys, but if I lose to him, it's fine. So Mrazek makes 23 saves on 27 shots. Boston did outshoot them 10-6 in the third. But that's not indicative of the play, I didn't think. Rask saves 28 out of 30. This is Tuukka Rask playing at his best. This is the best I've seen him play in the playoffs since 2013. And the bad news for Carolina is this. They played a very good road game. They out-hit the Bruins. They out-chanced the Bruins. I think they outplayed Boston, and Boston won the game. Now, the key for Carolina going into Game 2 is going to be simple. Don't change a thing. Rod Brind'Amour, don't change a thing. Maybe think about putting McElhinney in just to see if that changes things. But if he goes with Mrazek, I can't complain too much because, honestly, he's been smarter than a lot of coaches in the playoffs, and he knows what he's doing. But for Carolina, the trick's going to be don't change your approach. Don't change your strategies. Stick with it, and you'll win. Carolina can win this series. This was a very evenly played game that I think favored Carolina for most of it, and then it unraveled in 30 seconds. Smart timeout call. After the timeout call, I felt like Carolina got it back together, but rough penalties, and hopefully in Game 2 we won't see it this way again. So there you go. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.